The person who's more passionate at something is going to excel much more than the person who's just kind of doing it because they were told this is something you're supposed to do. So when times get tough, you're going to need that passion to get you over those humps. The most successful people in the industry, they might not be who you think they are. If we don't learn to love ourselves first, to be our own number one fan, we're asking a lot from the other person. The self-talk we have it that exists inside our head is constantly telling us, don't say anything, you're not worth it. And so we're constantly battling that.
I'm ecstatic to have everyone with me again today, and I'm blown away to have an amazing guest, Chris Doe, with me today.
Thank you, Matthew. This is long overdue, but I'm really happy to be here.
I mean, I know that you're really passionate about helping the average individual not just start a business, but actually create a business that they love, where they get to do what they're passionate about. I think a lot of people are going to struggle to believe the guy that they're hearing from right now is introverted. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I just want to be sure that people don't think because you're an introvert means that you're kept out of the kingdom of success. I don't know this for a fact, but I imagine Bill Gates is an introvert. I might even imagine that Steve Jobs is an introvert. I'm not sure. And Elon Musk. So some of the most successful people, titans of industry, they might not be who you think they are, because one is about how we manage our energy around people, and the other is about how we manage our energy when we show up when we need to. It's called being a professional. So when I do public speaking, or if I'm teaching a class, I'm not going to let all my idiosyncratic insecurities or my lack of confidence and self-belief impact the way that I'm transmitting energy to people, because people show up for that. So I have to play the part of an instructor or a public speaker or a leader in a business, so that people have that confidence that you're worth listening to. But it's something that you build up over time, just like a muscle.
Absolutely, and I can tell you right now, Bill Gates is absolutely an introvert, and the founder of Tesla, definitely an introvert as well. But the big thing for me is really helping people believe they can make a great living doing what they love, and really to focus on what they're passionate about, and they'll make better money, as opposed to doing what's practical, because they'll hate it and they'll likely make less money. So help me understand, like you speak to a lot of people on this topic, what are some of the biggest barriers that you see around valuing themselves and articulating their pricing?
Okay, so if you're an introverted creative, which is almost synonymous, they generally are paired together, an introvert tends to struggle with articulating their value because they're first, I'm just speaking for myself then, we're not comfortable just taking up any attention. And the self-talk that we have it that exists inside our head is constantly telling us, don't say anything, you're not worth it. And so we're constantly battling that. And so one of those things is we have to work through that to say, you know what, if we don't learn to love ourselves first, to be our own number one fan, we're asking a lot from the other person. And it's really difficult. My wife and I, we'd have discussions about this. And she goes one time to try to cut me down a little bit. She goes, oh, you just love yourself so much. And that was meant to be an insult. It wasn't to praise me. And the way that I responded to that was I had to process that and convert that energy in my mind. And I asked her something. I asked her, a person who doesn't love themselves requires you to love them more, and it can be very consuming. Have you been around people like that before? And she goes, yes. Do you like being around them? No, because there's no room left for you. There's no oxygen in the room. So I said, you want people, especially someone that you're married to love themselves, because then you don't spend all that energy trying to love them. And so I think we have to begin this internal dialogue to learn to love ourselves. And then we can start to explore our passion and channel our energy into that, because my feeling is this, is if all things being equal, the person who's more passionate at something is going to excel much more than the person who's just kind of doing it because they were told this is something you're supposed to do. Because when times get tough, you're going to need that passion to get you over those humps and the ditches and the scraped knees and everything else. You're going to need that to push you forward to get through the difficult times.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm always reminded of the Jim Carrey quote that, you can fail at what you don't love, so why not take a chance at what you love. The biggest focus for me is always saying, okay, I'm going to follow my passion. But the thing that I find so often is people go, well, that sounds a little woo-woo, like I'm not entirely certain I can make money out of that. And following my passion, how does that actually even apply to business sometimes? For the people that you've just convinced to go and follow their passion and follow an idea that they're going to get to a point that they love to sell, what recommendations would you have when it comes to articulating my value, because I can love myself, but if I can't explain that, it's
Right.
still going to be a problem.
Okay, this is perfect then. I'm going to say it like this. You and I, we can agree on lots of different things, but there is no universal truth on beauty, fairness, and value. And so when you ask me, Chris, why should I pay this much for this thing? My response isn't to say, well, let me tell you why, because I'm using my frame to describe to you what matters to me. And there's no way I can know what it is that is important and valuable to you. So my general response would be like, I don't know why anybody would pay this. Is this connected at all to a problem that's important to you? What is it that you value? Let's forget that we're going to talk about a logo for a second. Why are we even talking in the first place? And then this person would then articulate to you what matters to them. And so the thing that I'm always thinking about is I want to find a big important problem that has some urgency relative to the person who's sitting in front of me. What I care about has nothing to do with them at all. And so if they are going to push back and say, I don't need this, I'm going to agree. I don't think you need this either. What is it that you do need then? So then the conversation is centered around them. So a lot of times we make the mistake of directing all the conversation towards ourselves, and then this is going to make you even more nervous. So the easiest thing to do, introvert, extrovert, whatever it is, focus on the person in front of you.
I think that's really good advice. I mean, I'm constantly telling people it's not about you. When you're selling, it's not about you. When you're networking, it's not about you. So is there something we can do so we don't get to that horrible, uncomfortable, well, hang on a second, you said it's too expensive. I'm a little bit confused here, because if it was me, I'd be wondering, well, no one wants to go through the multiple vendor process, the due diligence process, spending their time with their sales reps or contractors and developers, as opposed to their family and friends. So they've clearly invited them there for a reason. Is there something we can do to preface the conversation so that we don't end up in that awkward price conversation or that uncomfortable, well, why am I here then kind of mindset?
Yeah, I think the thing that we need to do is we need to learn a new way of listening. And this is going to sound a little bit weird, but hang in there with me. Marshall Rosenberg, I believe that's his name, he wrote a book called Nonviolent Communication. And he says that there's going to be people who are going to speak to you in all different kinds of ways, but we can learn to listen to them differently. So he says there's only basically two kinds of communication that people will do. One is they're going to say thank you, or the other is they're going to be saying please. So when you say, here's my price, it's $10,000. And if you're getting any pushback, if they're not like, oh my God, what a fair price, I want to sign on the dotted line right now, that would be a thank you. No matter what else they say, it's a please. Please, can I have more information? Please, I'm having a hard time understanding what it is that you do. Help me out. So it's a cry for help. And so if we can listen with those kinds of ears, it'll prevent us from reacting emotionally to what is being said. Because the natural default emotional reaction is, I'm offended. You don't value what it is that I do. This is insulting to me. How dare you? And that's not going to be a great place of a great mental space for building great relationships and dialogue with someone. So try to interpret it. Is it a please or is it a thank you?
That's really great. And I think that a lot of introverts feel uncomfortable when anything like this comes up because they automatically take it personally. Like if somebody's asking that question, it's clearly an attack on their value, their ability to deliver, or at least that's how they perceive it. And how did you learn to regulate yourself at that action point and say, okay, I'm not going to perceive it this way, I'm going to perceive it this way instead?
Yeah, I think I can remember very early childhood memories when I was experiencing a very strong emotion like regret, and having the internal dialogue. And the example I like to give is like, I think I'm 7 or 8 years old, and I misplaced some of my money. And it was really bothering me because as a kid, you don't have any money, so money is really important to you. And I went around the house looking for it, and I asked my mom, have you seen my money? And she goes, no. And I said, I think somebody took it. And then she kind of like comes down to my level and she's talking to me. My mom's a very sweet and gentle person. She says, honey, do you think anybody in this family would take your money? Like, would dad take it? Would your brothers take it? I'm like, no. And so it made me really think about the kinds of questions I was even asking. I wanted to blame someone and not take responsibility. And so I was sitting there, I was just starting this to spin up in the negative dialogue, the self-talk saying, you're so dumb, you're so careless, how could you? You're freaking worthless. These are kinds of things we would say to ourselves when a negative outcome happens, right? And I remember pausing and thinking, no amount of negative energy, no amount of beating myself up is going to reproduce this money. It's gone. So I have to move from an emotional angry state to an accepting state, and so that I can move on. And I had this thought, is regret a useful emotion to feel? It's like we're longing for something that we can't put back together. And so I made a decision there, like in my life, I'm going to try to live towards this thing where I'm no longer going to feel regret. I'm going to either learn or I'm going to win, but those are my two options. And I can't win in this situation, so I'm going to learn. And ever since then, I've developed habits to keep things in a very specific place. I'm not quite OCD like that, but I put my keys in a certain place, so I don't have to worry about that. So that was a lesson. And so over time, that core is there, but I am influenced then by other people, things that I read and learn, and through coaching, how I can harness that energy. And the way that I look at it is, you want to remain neutral and objective and even keeled in any negotiation, whether you're talking about asking someone out or asking a client to sign on the dotted line. Try to keep your energy in that neutral space.
I think that a lot of people let things go until the point that they react, because they don't let things go. They constantly hold on to them, and therefore the regret from one element connects to the regret from the next and the next, and it can become paralyzing. One question I really want to get from you, which is, I know a lot of people, especially, and I know you've got a lot of experience in the photography space, a lot of times, things happen where we're trying to articulate our value and our pricing, and people say, well, I really just want one photo, or I really just want one logo. How much is it for that? And I think you and I both know there's a lot more work in that. There's a lifetime of experience to be able to do that one logo, but there's a lot of work around it and a lot of work around that photo. How do you help or what would you suggest for the average introvert that's getting asked for just one coaching session, one logo, one image, one something, reframe that conversation so that they see the value or see the work that's required behind that?
I want to warn everybody, whether it's intentional or unintentional, when someone else uses the word just, it's to diminish whatever it is they're going to say after that. So it's just one photo. It's just this little thing, right? And I think you need to be aware of that and remove that from your mind. Now, when someone's asking that, and in that way, they're looking to negotiate with you. And you have to make a couple of decisions, and you're going to have to decide really quickly. Is this the kind of person I want to work with? Is this the person I want to share my gift with? And if it's not, you can just simply bow out. You can say, I understand that this feels like it's a lot of money relative to what you're asking for. I'm probably not going to be a good fit for you. And you deserve to find someone who's going to be as passionate about doing this for the amount of money that you want, as opposed to me. It's just probably not a good idea. Why would you ever say that? And people say that, oh, Chris, you're famous for telling people how to lose clients and go out of business. I'm not. Because what happens is you allow them to check themselves right in that moment. And oftentimes when you do that, they're going to then say, wait, I'm not saying that. I'm sorry. It's going to allow them to hit the reset button. So here's the thing. If I were yelling at you, what is your natural default reaction? It's to recoil. But if I whisper, your natural reaction is to lean in. So when you're constantly defending yourself, proving yourself, and responding in a defensive manner, it's the equivalent of you yelling. And when you just say, you know what, it's probably just not a good fit, and you do this in a neutral, calm, and kind tone, that gives them a chance. Now, if they're like, you know what, you're right, I'm out of here, you probably have dodged a bullet, because there are red flags that this project is not going to go well. Now, it's okay, because we're all kind of taught and socialized differently that we should get a bargain and get a good deal. And so it can just be interpreted the second way, which is they're just negotiating with you. You have a couple of decisions to make now. You can just say, I'm not saying you should pay this amount or that it's worth it, but to get me to do it, this is going to be the amount. So I'm not going to lower myself into an argument, because the minute I start defending myself, I've already begun to lose. And then that's when they get to say, once again, okay, all right, help me understand this. They're coming back to the conversation. Now, if they're looking for a concession for a lower price or something else, you can meet them. But then now we want to employ the give-get principle in negotiation. If I'm going to give you something, I need to get something back. Because if you agree to give them something without getting something back, in their mind, even though you're doing them a solid, they're thinking, oh, they inflated the price. What else can I negotiate for? And that's a slippery slope. So if you want to give them a lower price, you can say something like this: I can agree to lower the price by X percentage. That's the best that I can do. However, in order for me to do that, you need to pay me 100% upfront in cash. Oh, I don't have cash. I can't do it upfront. Well, then the price is the price. So it's just a form of negotiation. So just remember, when people use that word just, it's to diminish whatever it is that you're about to do or talk about. Whatever word that follows the word just, that's what they're doing. It's a negotiation ploy or tactic. You don't have to bite.
That's really powerful. And I think what everyone is hearing is, again, here is coming back to cause, not reacting, but actually being thoughtful and seeing what they're doing. And I think that's, again, so important. The number of times that, people, I remember when I first started speaking and people would say, oh, could you do it for a lesser price? And if you ever say yes, then they expect that price forever. And then they tell their friends about that price. And now you're stuck in that price. And they're always the hardest clients. They keep asking for more stuff because they still think you said yes too quickly. Where if you start saying, well, I might be interested in that, except I would ask for you to do instead, I would make sure that you had a camera team there to record the whole appearance so that I had that for afterwards. All of a sudden, they're now, I'm not sure if I could get a camera team there, or okay, well, I might consider that, or no, I'm not willing to offer you any concessions. By the way, can I have it cheaper? You start to get an idea of the kind of person they are, and you'll very quickly smell, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrific to work with for the next 6 to 12 months. So yes, exactly what Chris is saying. Do not just accept them because they're going to be a pain, but also realize that you can't fire everyone. But if you have these conversations, all of a sudden you'll realize you end up with better clients and you'll have more time, you'll get paid higher, which means you'll have more time to look for the right types of clients to fill in the gaps of the clients that you have. So this is really valuable information. I hope everyone's taken a moment to really take this in. And obviously, Chris Stowe has a ton of videos out on all of his different channels, from TikTok to YouTube. And I know he's got a big Clubhouse account now as well, so you can, kind of listen to him a little bit more live. But before we get into exactly where Chris would suggest most introverts discover more about him, Chris, I have to ask you the question I ask everyone on the Introvert's Edge podcast. We're all so used to talking about how bad introversion is, how much of a struggle it is, why it's hard. I like to focus on what superpowers we have and how we harness them. So I'd love to get an understanding of what you consider your Introvert's Edge.
Wonderful. Now, before I answer that question, I want to add to something in terms of the value conversation, okay? The thing is, it's human nature to want things that we can't have. It's the whole business model in the psychology of luxury goods and luxury anything. It's because fewer people can have it, we want it more. So the only real power you have as a creative professional is to say no, to withhold your services. And when you stand your ground, not in an aggressive way, not in a combative way, but you are not willing to make these concessions, the person is going to say, well, of course I can afford this and I want this. A real life example is this. Quite literally right now, my wife and I are to put an offer into buying a house, right? It's a big deal. It's the biggest investment you're ever going to make in your life. And we're not the highest offer. And the broker is telling us you need to come in at this or make these. And then I just told my wife it wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't. I gave them my best and final. We're going to withdraw. And you know what immediately happened? The person who was messaging me is my wife saying, the broker has come back saying, no, we really want you to stay in here. It's the first move that we've made to express that, you know what, you can't just push us around so much because we'll find other things. We have options. And that's a lot of power that you have. Don't give that away. My introvert's edge is this. I don't want to speak. So you know what? I've developed really good listening skills. And there's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it's quite powerful just to listen to people, to take notes and be attentive. And then they feel like I'm the important person. You get the credit for being the one who's really interesting. Oftentimes when I'm just talking to clients, I'm just asking them a question and staying silent the whole time. And it's a really powerful way to shift the dynamic and how you can contribute value to the world. We always think the extroverts have the advantage in speaking all the time. But when you're speaking, you can't learn. It's impossible. So let's use our introvert power or superpower and just ask better questions and then be silent.
That is so valuable. I can't tell you the number of salespeople that are extroverted that I've seen talk their way out of a deal just as well as they talk themselves into it in the beginning. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. I so appreciate it. And to everyone listening, thank you for lending us your ears yet again. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Introvert's Edge podcast. Cheers, everyone.